Horror.
Hello and welcome to the 72nd episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I am joined by my brother Rob.
Googly.
And special guest and fellow Star Trek nerd, Mr. Mike.
Hello, all.
And he is here because this week we're going to be talking about Star Trek, and we will get to that. But we're back.
Indeed.
Hi. We've been away for about a week. I've been gone on vacation in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and we didn't know this until we got there. But we went on a boat cruise, and they said that of the 50 shark attacks reported in the United States in the last year, 25 were in New Smyrna Beach, Florida.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, which makes it the shark bite capital of the world.
There you go. There's your T-shirt.
Are you, Mike, have you ever seen a shark? Are you afraid of shark bites?
I'm not afraid of sharks, but I would say I'd be afraid of shark bites.
Okay, that's fair. But yes, that's where I've been. And Rob, how have you been doing? You've been okay?
Oh, I've been doing fine, just holding it down.
Yes.
I was having a slow day at work the other day, and I realized something kind of funny. We sell this anti-spyware software there that has Chuck Norris on the front cover.
Oh, that's good, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like, Chuck Norris will protect your children, like from the internet. And we started talking, like, how would Chuck Norris fight the internet?
Right.
And I came to a conclusion.
Okay, I'm following.
Spoiler alert, or cover your ears if you don't want to know this terrible, awesome power. But otherwise, Here's how you destroy the internet. If you ever want to do it for fun, what you do is you Google. All right? And when you do that, Google becomes self-aware.
Okay.
And
I like where this is headed.
When Google becomes self-aware, it realizes what kind of atrocities it has inflicted upon people with the types of things people search for on a regular basis. And so Google has no other recourse than to destroy itself for the betterment of mankind. And that destruction also radiates and takes down the internet with it.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how you take down the internet, by the way.
That's good. Thank you for telling us that.
You're welcome.
Any comments?
Does Chuck Norris defend us from that?
Yeah, Chuck Norris, he is the shield that protects us from the shockwave.
I feel safer already.
So you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mike and I are sharing the rock band mic, which I think means that this podcast is actually entirely rock band mics right now. Am I correct?
Indeed. I use the rock band mic normally. It's a quality device.
Yes, for anyone who had illusions that this was a well-produced show, this is two rock band mics, and we can hear you on two headphones plugged in through a Belkin dongle, which has a disturbing appearance.
It's quite alarming.
I mean, they didn't have to make this thing look like this.
It dongles. That's it's a good name for it.
And it's hanging out of the laptop limply while our two... Yeah, anyway.
It doesn't quite dangle. It dongles.
Correct. But yeah, that's unfortunate. So let's go ahead and get into some geek news here. Mm-hmm. Every week we like to read a lot of news stories and bring you our favorite. And Rob, this week, what was your favorite geeky news story?
I'm here to kick butt and chew bubble gum. That's what's going on.
That's totally what's going on. I've heard about that.
Yeah, apparently Apogee, 3D Realms, that whole group of people who were working on Duke Nukem Forever, which was taking forever to come out.
Yeah, it's been in development since I was a senior in high school.
Yes.
I got to ask Mike, did you ever play Duke Nukem 3D back in the day?
I didn't ever play it, but I did know what it was, and I had no idea that they've been working on something for the last 10 years or whatever.
Yes, they've been working on a sequel.
Right, so they've gone under. All right?
Yes.
The project has essentially been canned. The people working it are done. The recession has killed them.
Apparently.
But the good news or the upside of that is that now all of this stuff has come forward kind of showing what they were working on.
Right.
And it's really interesting to see that, in fact, this isn't a joke. Like, really, there was a game being made, and remade. Like, in interviews, the guy was saying you essentially have to start from the beginning every 3 years because of the way technology moves.
I know. That's been the god-awful thing about it is, like, I think the original one was, like, on the Quake engine or something, or maybe even earlier.
I think it's Quake 2. Quake 2 engine, because and they had screenshots that kind of looked good for the time, but now are just like, ugh.
Yeah, so of course the economy would kill that, because the first thing that's going to get jettisoned is the game that's been sitting there for 15 years,
I know. But they've done that, and there's screenshots out kind of showing the character models, the detail. There seemed to be a lot of work going into having really kind of flexible enemy AI. These the pigmen or whatever, which were kind of the main
pig cops.
enemy. Yeah.
Yeah.
They show kind of how they've programmed like multiple sort of pathways that they can take given certain obstacles so that they move like really fluidly, and it's not like kind of just static, like, okay, and now they run towards you, you know, like it's a lot of like they bound off of walls, climb over things, really kind of cool looking stuff. And so it's kind of sad, you know, it's like, well, man, this was real. And it got me thinking, like, there aren't that many games out there that don't take themselves this seriously.
Right,
you know?
Well, especially nowadays with the whole, like, you know, colonial marine / you know,
World War II,
World War III, whatever. It's always like very serious. Even Brothers in Arms was like a more tongue-in-cheek one, but it was still fairly traditional World War II type game. And Duke Nukem was just a jokester, you know? And actually, the whole design document has leaked, and you can read level by level what you were supposed to do and the bosses, and even the one-liners that he had, you know, like, you know, stick it up, you know, whatever. But, you know, they show him giving the middle finger while he's, like, falling down this hole. And
it's that whole politically incorrect thing, just, like, they don't care, they're gonna do it. It's you know, offensive on so many levels, and perhaps these days the only game that really kind of goes near that is Grand Theft Auto, maybe.
Right, But even GTA doesn't. The strippers are censored, you know, and the television stuff is still tame.
I mean, Lost and Damned had a full-on digital wang.
It did indeed, yeah, that's true. But that's still male nudity, which is somehow in style right now.
Yeah.
Amber always jokes about the scene in Red Dragon where Ralph Fiennes is bounding up the stairs naked. Have you seen that?
I have seen it, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like just a whole lot of Ralph Fiennes, and it's the gravity of the situation, like literally, as he's running up the stairs. Like,
because they could do it, and it's why.
Yeah, and it's just this trend nowadays with male nudity. But what Ars Technica actually had a chance to play this like 2 years ago, like a build of it, and they said that on the TV in Duke Nukem there was like porn, like real deal porn, and that the files were actually like the files for the movies were actually like you could drag those separately off the CD. So like if you thought hot coffee was hot, like that whole like incident with just like digital nudity in GTA, like that would have been like an explosion, you know.
Yeah, that probably was just more or less placeholders. I don't imagine that was their intention, but
well, I don't know.
Well, do they have any intention of selling this franchise to another game company that can actually?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the big thing now is what happens next, and obviously with the design documents out,
it's pretty bad.
They can. Modders are probably going to jump all over that, but there is now a website. It's dukeisback.com, or if you read it really fast, it looks like it says Dukey's back.
Oh, can I say something real quick about that? I'm sorry, just reminded
go ahead.
me. While we were on vacation, this is another anecdote from our vacation. We were in the hotel, and there was a business for AC, like air conditioning, and the guy's name was Crumbs, so his business was called Crumbs AC, but that website is crumbsack.com.
Yikes.
It came up on the screen multiple times, and I was like, this guy, did he not realize? It's the same with that Speed of Art website, which just translates to Speedo Fart when you look at it fast. It's like, watch your websites. But so Duke is
back, or Duke is back. It's actually Deep Silver, and I guess Apogee is still kind of remaining. 3D Realms is the one that went under, but they're trying to get auditions now, like kind of having people post auditions to be like
Duke Nukem.
To be Duke Nukem, yeah, and to just a live action thing and to go around promoting it. And so
they're promoting the DS game though. I think there's
Duke Nukem Trilogy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the only sort of remnants that's left. And as far as Duke Nukem Forever, I mean, 2K tried to buy some rights, but I have a feeling that they're still going to hold on to the intellectual property. Like, who owns that still owns it. And maybe one day, I mean...
I can only hope, because now I feel really sad. Like, it was funny to make fun of it, you know, and be like, oh my God, how long is this game taking? But I always thought it would come out. And the videos look decent. Like, I want to play it now. The rumor is that there will probably be a hacked version, as in Thrill Kill or these other games that were canceled that eventually made their way onto the internet.
Right.
There'll probably be a hacked version at some point. We'll get to see that.
Well, like I was just saying, Interplay came back in a big way with Fallout 3, and they hung on to that IP until they could use it. So really quick, Brad, a question, like Duke Nukem Forever, game that notoriously hasn't come out. We've always talked about Huxley, a game that's never really come out. Can you think of like one game that you feel like has never really made it out, or you can remember like anticipating?
Well, actually, it's funny that you mentioned that. I think this would be a good point to transition into my favorite news story of the week, because it deals with exactly that. People who listen to this show probably know that I'm a big fan of the Tex Murphy PC games, as are you.
Yes.
But the tragic thing about that series, and I was telling this to Mike earlier, was the last Tex Murphy game, which was called Overseer, had a cliffhanger ending, and then the studio that made it, Access Software, was bought and shut down. So there was never a proper answer to what happened to Tex Murphy at the end of that game. Well, the creators of the game have recently founded a game studio, and it's called Big Finish Games, and their goal is to raise enough funding to be able to make a sequel to the Tex Murphy game. Now, they actually have the rights now. As of this year, they acquired the rights to the franchise. If you go to their website, it says Project Fedora, and it says, to be announced. And if anybody knows Tex Murphy, he wore a fedora. He's a detective. But in the meantime, their first game came out on Thursday.
Really?
It's not a Tex Murphy game, but it is an adventure game. It's called 3 Cards to Midnight, and it's actually a downloadable game for $20. And heck, as soon as I saw that, I'm like, Amber, we have to buy this. We have to give them $20. It's largely a word puzzle game, but it deals with a girl that can't remember. It's not live action. It's actually CG characters. They look like they were made. They look like they were made in Poser, actually. So it's not very high production value. But she can't remember her past, and so she goes to a tarot card reader. He calls up memories of her life, and then you sort of search these rooms for clues. It's very word puzzle, very brain game. Amber and I are actually enjoying it a lot. And the thing here is, if this does well, which I doubt it will, they are going to try and make this happen. So
you're going to single-handedly fund the whole effort to bring back the Tex Murphy game.
Yeah.
Well, where do I go to get this? What's the
So Big Finish Games is the company, bigfinishgames.com. And you can actually pay with a credit card right there and get 3 Cards to Midnight. The puzzles are pretty cool. The story is really the key. Their motto as a company is to make good story-based games.
Cool. Sort of like Traveler's Tales or the Adventure Company. There are still companies out there that have managed to find a way to earn capital off of adventure games.
Telltale. I mean, Telltale's making the Sam & Max games, and there's actually a rumor. Now, this really raises the hopes of the fans out there, and this is such a rumor, but the rumor is that Telltale is actually trying to work with Big Finish Games to get the rights to Tex Murphy and make a legitimate sequel. That would be cool because they've done adventure games episodically online, and I think it could live in an environment like that.
Now, would you want to see Tex Murphy like as a polygonal model, like?
Yeah, I thought about that because Chris Jones is not getting any younger, but he's got a great voice. In fact, he voices a character in 3 Cards to Midnight, so right away I was like, oh, no. But I think it would have to be probably a 3D thing. I mean, if there's anything less likely than an adventure game, it's an FMV game in 2009,
True. But I kind of would like to see them somehow, because those games push the envelope with technology.
Yeah. There is no game now where you have a futuristic city with a old-fashioned gumshoe PI roaming around talking to mutated freaks. And that, I hope that concept would still be cool. But that is 3 Cards to Midnight and the possibility of some new Tex Murphy. And I think that sums up our geek news for this week.
Yeah.
So without further ado, we're going to move on to Star Trek because Mike has been patiently waiting here as the nerd shield has been enclosed around us.
It's my nerd moment,
Yeah. So Star Trek, we're going to talk about the new movie. Everybody's probably seeing this. J.J. Abrams directed this. It's a reboot of the franchise, essentially doing a Batman Begins to Star Trek. And the story deals with the sort of origins of Kirk and Spock and their entry into Starfleet. I'm going to first go around, and I'd like to just get the general impression, your overall impression of the movie from each one of us. So I'm going to start with Mike, since he's been patiently waiting here. What was your overall impression?
It's hard to say. I had mixed feelings upon originally hearing when they first said they were going to make it.
I remember we had a conversation where you said you thought that you were going to hate it as a Star Trek movie, but like it as a movie.
To some degree, I think I still feel that way in some respects. I think as a whole, I thought it was very entertaining and a well-built movie in the fact that, the plot was good, the arrangement of it was good, and it had the right amount of action versus drama and dialogue and whatnot.
Correct seasoning was applied.
Yes, they didn't make a clumsy movie. I thought it was pretty. It was a quality film. My only, I guess, overall thought about what I didn't like is probably what it's done to the franchise and what maybe it's saying about all of the other older material and
what this means for the future movies or the past movies.
Mostly, I think, on the past movies. I think they're certainly free to do whatever they want now with future movies, but it's really what were they saying about the past movies with the timeline.
Which are somewhat sacred to you. Now, your favorite film, I have to say, of all time is...
Of all time, it's The Wrath of Khan.
Star Trek II.
Yes.
Which you forced me and a group of our friends to watch. And no, I shouldn't say forced, because I fully enjoy Ricardo Montalban's cleavage. I believe it's real. I know there is a rumor out there that it was fake, but I think it's real.
I believe it's real as well. So quite a nice rack there that Khan has.
So that is your semi-mixed on it. Rob, what did you think? Overall impressions, before we get to specifics.
I like this movie. I really think I could easily recommend anybody to see this. And by anybody, I mean Star Trek fans and regular folk alike. It was a very elegant solution. I kind of felt like, I think in this day and age, we've seen so many series reboots, that we kind of, don't even expect any sort of explanation for it.
Yeah, and the amount of people that were around to see the original series in its prime, I mean, they're dwindling in number,
Well, sure.
So
they're out there.
Right.
Somebody's out there.
I think what's cool about this movie is that rather than just going and reinventing the series, it actually tips a hat to the legitimacy of the old series.
They did certainly make the attempt to explain how it got rebooted and what they did, and I think that was their way to, appease all of the earlier Star Trek fans and to pull them into this new timeline.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're saying it's not a sloppy reboot.
No, well, it's one of those rare cases where I feel like general audiences will like it.
Yeah.
And the fan base will like it,
Yeah, I will say for my overall reaction, mostly great. I do have nitpicks. Actually, not nitpicks, but more of just a curve of the film where I feel like it started very strong and kind of curved downward. I don't know if anybody else felt that way. But let's get into some pros and cons. I'll start with, just to lead into this, a big pro of mine is the look of this film. Nothing is cheap in this entire movie. And they must have gone to the school of Firefly because there is all kind of shaky camera work and a lot of lens flares, almost too many almost.
Yeah.
And that kind of science fiction where we see things that realistically, I've never seen in any science fiction film, like views of space, views of ships that were that convincing.
It definitely was a different look for Star Trek. That was the first thing I think I really noticed. But personally, I really liked the new look. I liked the new effects for the warp drive, the phasers. Beaming was really good. The one thing that I really did notice was all the original series and television shows, all of the sets were very pristine, and this Enterprise we finally see piping. Piping, tanks.
There was an entire room that was almost like Enterprise, where it was like a submarine inside.
Yeah, I think it gave more reality, which I think might be something that they were trying to aim for some of the newer crowds.
Now, I have to out you here. You basically have built a captain's chair in your house. Is this true?
This is true. The initial thing when I saw the original preview was, oh man, I'm gonna have to build a new chair because.
Yeah. So, do you approve of the new chair?
I do approve of the new chair. I mean, I enjoy my nostalgic old chair, but I approve of the new set.
And I will say, Mike's chair is impressive. It is a exact copy of the chair from the original. Rob, do you concur? Do you also enjoy the new chair?
I didn't really pay too much attention to the new chair. Honestly,
okay.
I feel like I've failed people because as one who owned a Star Trek encyclopedia and would page through it with you, Brad,
That's right. And I have to say that when the title Star Trek came up on the screen and those words came across, the thought that entered my head was, heck yeah, I'm going on a trek in the stars. Anybody else feel that way? Like they made me look at those words like they were fresh.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think Matt had a similar experience, overwhelmed with nostalgia to the point of tears welling up in your eyes.
Right.
You're like, I'm 15 again or whatever, and now people aren't going to laugh at me for liking this thing,
Mike, I want to hear from you. What's some other things that you did like about the movie?
I liked the generally how they portrayed the characters and how they maybe enhanced some of the attributes of certain characters and I think they made Kirk more rowdy and somewhat funnier. I think they added more of a sense of humor to some of the characters. I think Scotty and Chekhov certainly were more of a comic relief role, sort of in the movie, and they gave Uhura dramatic, background information about her and everything. And
is there anybody who you think did the best job?
I thought the portrayal of Kirk was probably the one that stood out the most. I like how they portrayed him. A little different than, the original Kirk, maybe less disciplined.
Yeah, is the father stuff legit to the story? I was curious about that.
I think George Kirk, was his father, and I think they mentioned that in the original series, but I'm not familiar whether he was a ship captain or any of that.
I really thought that worked great, though. I mean, I think that intro was amazing.
Yeah, I think that was really important to the story, and I really like that. So,
yeah. Rob, who did a good job for you? Was it Kirk as well, do you think?
Well, I mean, Kirk impressed me very much, and I think because so much was weighing on him. This Chris Pine, who is that? I felt like the cast was really spot on in, I think, what you said, Mike, enhancing what they were. Kirk was a heartthrob, like in the 60s.
Yeah, totally.
And I gotta say, there was a moment when he sits down in the captain's chairs or something where it really was apparent that Chris Pine had studied Bill Shatner's movements.
One thing I was looking for was I was going to see if they put a little homage to the Kirk's fighting style in the new movie, but I don't think he got his shirt ripped, and I didn't see him do a jump kick on anyone. So
no. Speaking of fighting style, though, how bad is Sulu? I think that was one of the high points of the film.
There is an original episode where they get space madness roughly, and he is running around the ship with a fencing sword. And
also, there is a Star Trek character that has been enhanced and reborn in that scene, which was the red suit.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
That's true. I think people were laughing to themselves in the audience as soon as they saw an away team member, and one of them is a guy we don't know, and he's wearing all red.
Yeah.
And he's a little too enthusiastic.
Yeah.
You're like, this guy's going to bite it, and he's going to bite it hard.
I also have to say a character I really enjoyed, Scotty's little friend.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
That little guy, I know that nobody was really laughing in the theater, so I felt kind of bad for laughing, and I'm sure this is a cheap gag, but I liked that little dude. I don't know, was he funny to you? He's like a little Ugnaught or whatever.
I think it seemed very Star Wars to me, because usually they didn't have that level of detail of makeup and stuff for Star Trek.
His weird eyes that moved back and forth.
I literally applauded whenever I saw that he was back with Scotty at the end, because it was so heartbreaking when he leaves, and he kind of does this puppy dog oh.
Yeah, he's treated like less than a person. He's basically treated like a pet, which is why I say I feel almost bad, because I don't think it's the greatest role, but I thought he was funny. I'm sorry, I did.
I think they wanted that emotion out of the audience to feel bad for that guy.
Did a great job. In Scotty, I think would actually probably be very high on the list of just characters that I loved watching.
One thing my friend was saying, which I didn't really pick up on when I was watching the movie, but he kept asking for food or whatever during the movie.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was implying that he was going to gain weight in future movies.
Oh, that's a good point. There you go. He's just that hungry.
Yeah.
That would be funny if they did that for real. So those are some of the characters that we liked. Are there any other pros before we move on to the cons?
I guess my pro is that I liked how they focus on a new, younger audience that would maybe pick up the franchise and watch it.
Yeah. Rob, any final pros before we move on to the negativity?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is just the overall feel. It's exciting. It's new. I'm looking forward to what's gonna come next.
Yeah.
And I think my final pro.
Yeah.
Spock's ship.
It is
the jellyfish.
Awesome. It is awesome.
My girlfriend said to me, "Can you get that for me for my graduation present?"
Yeah, it's nice. The jellyfish, is that what it's called?
That's what tentatively, a lot of people just call it that, jellyfish.
Yeah, the designs were off the charts. Definitely, I think the visual style of this movie was my favorite part about it overall.
Mm-hmm. Spared no expense.
Spared no expense.
We're talking about Spock. I think the one part I did like was they made him more human, which in the original series we always knew he was half human, half Vulcan. Yeah. But I think they stressed some of his human emotions in this, which I think really helped build a character and I guess generate a link between the audience and Spock in some way.
Yeah. So let's get into some bad stuff. So what is wrong with this movie? There are some Star Trek fans out there that would tell you that it is just a tragedy front to back, including the Beastie Boys music, which I keep reading about. Yeah. That didn't bother you, right?
Not really. I mean, they've used older music in First Contact or something. They had some Roy Orbison or whatever. Yeah. I'm not bothered by that.
Roy Orbison, yeah. I thought it was freaking awesome. I have to say, when the Beastie Boys yell "yeah" and so does he, like, I enjoyed the heck out of that. But Rob, let's talk about some negative stuff. What didn't you like about Star Trek?
It might just be intrinsic with this film, but the whole point of this movie is to assemble this group.
Yeah, and it definitely does that.
But in the end, you're like, well, no great evil empires have fallen. No Death Star was destroyed.
Yeah.
Wait for the cool thing,
A lot of people said that about the 8th, I want to say, or 9th movie, Insurrection. And I think I kind of understand where you're coming from, because I thought this villain, like the skin-stretching dude in Insurrection, was kind of forgettable. I don't really care about this villain, like, in the grand scheme of things. I do think they set up his evilness pretty good at the beginning, but my hatred for him waned throughout the movie, and actually that's kind of sad because he does a much more egregious thing.
I feel the same way with, they had to introduce all the characters, and when I heard that they were going to first make this movie, I was hoping that they would really maybe only focus on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and limit the introduction of all the other characters. I really don't like the movies, say like X-Men 1, and the whole movie is spent introducing characters and then no plot occurs.
Right, you don't get a lot of time for like big, large details to happen. I would say I want to talk a little about what I said about it dipping down in quality. For me, a lot of that happened when they introduced the way that they work old Spock into this story. I felt like that was kind of convoluted. I don't know about you guys. Did you feel that way, Rob? Like the Spock stuff and the Ice Beast and all, and that I thought, I don't know, like the tube with Scotty going through the tube, and I was kind of like, these action scenes, this second half of the movie almost feels like, it's almost like filler action, and like the plot has changed to this time thing. That's what I mean. I think the movie kind of, the elements went down a bit for me after that.
Well, I think that this movie tried to not merely have a boring event. There always had to be, I think, some aspect of peril, something interesting going on. If I had to nitpick one more thing, I think that the red matter, which, if you've seen the movie, you know what it is. If not, then this shouldn't spoil too much, but whatever.
Yeah, red matter.
Red matter, I think it's kind of sold as being really, really powerful, just in the degree of care that's taken with how it's handled.
Yeah.
But whenever it's fully unleashed, I think it was kind of like, wow, that's the exact same effect as when it was not as much.
Yeah, exactly. The red matter made me feel really dumb. Like, because I don't necessarily know what happened.
A problem that I have is how they always portrayed time travel in the past is that, when you go back in time and you alter the past, the future that did exist no longer exists. They're basically, with this movie, saying that time has changed and everything that occurred after, or I guess the original series and after, no longer exists. So I think a lot of fans might have a problem with, well, do I go home and throw away all my DVDs? Because that never happened.
Wouldn't it be awesome if somebody actually did that? Well, that'd be tragic, actually.
But, like all of the, Star Trek encyclopedias that they've written and novels and stuff, I almost felt that they kind of just negated everything. And I think I understand the purpose of the reboot. I personally didn't want them to reboot it. It would have been nice if they fit everything together. But I wish they would have presented that it was more of an alternate dimension or parallel timeline instead of a changing the timeline. That way, I think the older fans could say, well, okay, this is a new timeline, but the other timeline still exists, so I don't have to go home and throw away everything. And that
burned my chair.
Well, do you mind if I get a little techno-babbly on you?
Yeah, sure. This is why I hate time travel. But go ahead, Rob, real quick.
Because you sort of see how destiny or the timeline is kind of regathering itself, because maybe Kirk doesn't necessarily become the captain the way he originally did, but he still somehow manages to become it. So you can see like things are kind of curving back towards where they originally were.
And I think that was kind of a theme, that fate, would restore itself.
And the Force and midichlorians.
Yeah, yes, and all that. And I think that's fine. But the one thing that it was like just astonishing to me was they completely blew up.
Is that permanent?
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert, but they blow up something large that should be there later.
There was something that was shattering to the mythos of Star Trek. in the future.
It feels like it's
basically.
permanent. They don't restore that, right?
Yeah, it's permanent.
I can't see how they can restore.
Holy crap!
And it was something that hit me like after I walked out of the theater, and I was thinking about that. They really did something where, I mean, you look at other movies and stuff, and a few people get lost or whatever, but they end the movie on a high note.
Yeah, so if you want to hate J.J. Abrams, you got genocide and the erasure of everything that you hold dear. Only two small nitpicks.
So those are my two small nitpicks for the movie.
But I gotta say, J.J. Abrams, one of his strengths with like Lost or things like that, has always been his willingness to trample on sacred ground for the sake of just spectacle and of an amazing story. I remember the original pilot of Lost, Jack, the main character of the show, was supposed to die halfway through.
Right, yeah.
That's his thing. And I think it's kind of cool that there's enough comfort level there to say, you know what, we can do these things just to show you how unsafe you are.
Right.
You can't count on such and such being there or like something constant. It is in fact a new world. It's a new galaxy to explore.
Yeah, and to his credit, he delivered a solid film. I think we all kind of recognize that there have been far, far worse Star Trek movies. I'm sure you can name them. And I love that J.J. Abrams has, he has said in interviews that action is not special. Let that sink in. We can all do action. We can all make CG. That's not hard. The hard part is the story, and I think he delivered for the most part on making you connect with those characters.
And I think that's what I appreciated most about this was that they did treat the story as priority and not the action.
That's Star Trek, and before we end this episode, we always like to get a little nostalgic, reminisce about growing up geek, and speaking of red matter and science, we have Mike here. Mike, you're a mechanical engineer. I wanted to just real quickly talk about science when we were kids. I saw a microscope advertised online that's a USB microscope, and you put it on things and it magnifies it on your computer screen. Rob will remember this, but anyone who was wounded in our house or had a small, cut or anything, I had a little microscope that I'd run up and jam it on that wound and look at it, magnified, because I was just obsessed with that.
Well, I remember that jam because we wanted to see what was inside our bodies.
I did have a science kit, although we probably did something a little far more dangerous. My sister's a chemist, but we would play science and whatnot, and we would often just mix household chemicals together, which is probably a very dangerous thing. Kids out there don't do this, but I do remember one instance where we were mixing chemicals in a plastic, those Solo cups or whatever, and
oh my God, yeah, the party cup.
And the bottom of it kind of disintegrated, and this liquid that we mixed, poured down the sink with the melted plastic cup. I don't know what the hell we mixed, and it probably could have killed us.
But was it smoking and stuff?
It wasn't smoking. I think we hopefully knew better than to mix bleach and ammonia, but whatever we mixed was quite volatile.
No, because the old 50s science kits would literally come with hydrochloric acid and uranium. Oh, what is the rocks that are highly radiated?
Well, uranium, but I don't think they're giving that to kids.
A lot of zoology and animals, that kind of stuff, always got me interested. I had posters of South American creatures, and I'd always look at them and memorize them. The Sicilian worm, which is a gigantic worm, or leeches and spiders. I had a thing. I think I had a poster just of types of spiders.
Yeah.
That
awesome.
kind of stuff was cool.
Yeah, what profession were you heading towards with that in mind? Zoology?
Evil genius.
There you go.
Clearly what I was heading
Spiders,
towards.
hydrochloric. Yeah, if we could all just have combined our powers, I would use my microscope for something, I guess. I don't know.
I always pretty much wanted to be an engineer, and I probably wanted to be an engineer because watching Star Trek and Mr. Scott, quite honestly, is probably one of the major reasons that I'm actually...
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So, what is the difference between him as an engineer and you as an engineer?
He's a mechanic, which is hands-on and fun, and I do design and analysis work. Which
you sit in a cubicle.
I sit in a cubicle and do math all day long, so not quite the same, but...
Have you ever rode through a tube that was full of water?
I have not been through a tube full of water.
We did have cardboard spaceships, though, and we drove the heck out of those, I will say. But so those are some geeky memories, and if you grew up geek like us, you can send us an email by visiting our website at growing-up-geek.com. And as always, you can follow Rob on Twitter at twitter.com/GUGRob. If you need your geek fix throughout the week, he's got you covered there. And I think that's going to do it. So, Mike, thank you for guest starring.
Thank you for having me on.
No problemo. And I think that's going to do it. Once again, my name is Brad.
I'm Mike.
Live long and prosper.
And we'll see you next week.